Finance Committee to order at 9:01. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lloyd,
Present.
Commissioner Winfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Ellenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Avery,
Here.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner Kuzinoff,
Here.
Commissioner Wayhill, Commissioner Davis.
Here.
I'm looking for a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We now take time for public comment to the committee. Please step up to the podium if there's anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment. Second time, calling the third time. Public comment is now closed. Communications, we have some communications from the circuit court judges, so we'll take time to hear their presentation at this point in time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, they're originally scheduled to be on the Government Ops Committee, but they've asked if they could move up to Finance, so.
Yep, okay, yeah, come on up to the judge, or up to the podium there, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
I'm David Newblad. I'm the Chief Judge of Circuit Probate Court here in Genesee County. Today's a great day for the court. Thank you so much for having us. I want to start off in a way that I think you'll appreciate by not asking for money. Rather, we're here for a bit of show and tell. We want you to see some of the exciting things that are happening in the courts. We all know that things are changing quickly in our world. And in this situation, you can either follow the trends or you can be at the vanguard. I want you to know that your courts are in the vanguard, and we are aggressively so. We're using innovation to create synergies in an effort to better serve the public and to do it in an efficient and cost-effective way. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can a day possibly go by without someone blathering on using words like innovation and synergies? I can assure you that we mean it. I'm here to prove it to you. I have my team here to make a presentation as to how. Now, I'm just going to give you a little intro, but I'm not going to give you a laundry list of what you're about to see and hear. But I am going to give you a vision of what we're trying to do. And then we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation. There are essentially three parts to what we're doing right now. First is we're reforming and standardizing our court operations. This includes judicial offices, circuit court records, the front of the court, probate court, juvenile records. Secondly, and this is very exciting, we're creating a legal resource center to help the public utilize the courts. The center is going to be on the second floor of the courthouse where the library currently is. Third, we're putting these things together in a very powerful way. The goal is to use the resource center to increase access to the courts for the public, to make using the court easier and more meaningful, and to do it efficiently. I have with me today my team. I've got Barb Nier, the court administrator, Tony McDowell, front of the court, Sam Olson, who's the probate court administrator, and then Dave Combs is the head of court technology. I want to recognize and thank them. It is through their incredible efforts that all this is becoming a reality. I want to recognize everyone who works in the court and is a team member in this. They've also been working hard to bring this to fruition. And finally, I want to thank you, the commission. Without your guidance and support, none of this would have been possible. Very excited. This is big stuff, and it's a big day. This has been talked about for years, and it is finally going to happen. It is a reality. This will help people, and that's what it's all about. It's good government for which we can all be proud. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our great court administrator, Barb Nier.
Thank you, Judge. Good
Morning.
Morning.
I promised you we would come back and give you a little bit more information about the Legal Resource Center in particular in today's day. We have just a very few number of slides that we want to go through with you with a little bit of information and certainly be glad to entertain those. The first slide that you're looking at is, of course, the circuit court on the left that was built in 1926. I have to tell you, it was the 5th courthouse on that piece of property that was deeded to Genesee County by Waite Beach. Every courthouse for the circuit court and the probate court that it has existed in Genesee County has stood on that same piece of property. So in 2003, it was rededicated. That's the image on the left. On the right is a couple of days ago, which shows the great landscaping addition that you were able to and we're grateful for providing to the court just a few years ago. There are 4 historical markers on the site, and the property and the courthouse is on the National and State Register of Historic Places. So we're very proud of the location, and lawyers, judges, and others who use that facility consider it sacred ground. We started with a law library that looks similar to this image, and it looks like it's a very useful and progressive and well-suited facility. The problem was that most of those were not being updated. They were frankly cost prohibitive, and the materials were available online. So we made a decision as a court that we were moving away from individuals who had to have the book in their hand to people who were able and wanted to find that same information online. So there were 13,000 volumes that had to be decommissioned. It seems like that might be easy, but trust me, it was not easy. Dr. Brown, who is on our advisory committee, suggested I make some contacts at Michigan State. I did that. It looked very promising. I was satisfied that all of the material was available online, but when we got to 13,000 volumes and how are we going to get them from here to Lansing and who's going to pay for that and who's going to do it, all of a sudden that sort of fell to the wayside, if you will. Then I contacted Derek Bradshaw. Some of his staff worked with me trying to locate a couple of other possible recycling centers. I contacted everyone who was given to me as a lead, and once it got to 13,000 volumes, their interest waned. So Mike Noonan in Facilities and Operations, who previously worked for the state, told me he thought he had a guy. It's always good if somebody says they have a guy. So we made contact with that gentleman. He was from Hamtramck, came up here, did a walkthrough, gave us a price for sort of landfilling them, if you will, and a second price for the actual recycling, which was modestly more, very modestly more. And so we did business with him, and they were all taken from the Genesee County Circuit Court. All of the judges were asked, do you have volumes in addition that you want to, sort of get rid of at this time and purge? Let's do it one time. And it was accomplished. And this was paid for by a grant from the Michigan Supreme Court. No county dollars were involved in that decommissioning. I'll take you to the next slide, which is only representative of the fact that the library has faded away, if you will. And the Legal Resource Center is coming online. The next slide is the Legal Resource Center Advisory Committee. Judge Beagle is on this committee. He is, of course, a retired judge. He was the chief judge when this was in the thinking stage, if you will, and he has continued with the project. I mentioned Dr. Brown, Ms. Burrows, who's executive director of the Bar Association, Melissa Caldwell from the Y, Dominique Clemens, who's our strong partner in everything we're doing there. Thank him enough for agreeing to do business with the chief judge that allowed us to move forward with a different relationship so that the Legal Records Division, formerly the clerk's office, is operated by the court. That's a very important part of this project. Dave Combs is our court IT director, who you will meet in a moment. Tony McDowell, the director in front of the court, myself, Sam Olson, the administrator of the probate court, and Brian Smith, who was an attorney with Legal Services of Eastern Michigan. So this has been a really fantastic group to have online, and each of them bring a different perspective, all of whom have been instrumental in bringing us to this point. I'm going to turn the next part of this presentation over to Sam Olson.
Good morning. Thank you, commissioners, for having us here this morning. If we could go to the next slide. Well, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the history of the self-help movement, if you will, and the genesis of the project that we're talking about this morning. I will be brief, but hopefully informative on the matter. Michigan Legal Help is a online resource launched in 2012. It is online, kind of the go-to resource for all things in Michigan regarding kind of self-help center and self-help and how to navigate things, quote unquote, without an attorney. So they're a big partner in this project. You'll hear me talk about a lot of different organizations, entities, and stakeholders in the next couple minutes, and they'll all sound like they're all kind of the same thing, but really it's truly a collaborative effort with the focus on kind of helping those who can't navigate the system on their own. So Michigan Legal Help is part of the Michigan Advocacy Program, which is a legal aid organization in this state. Michigan Legal Help gets funding from the Michigan Supreme Court, the Michigan State Bar Foundation, grants from the State Bar of Michigan, and the Legal Services Corporation, among others. So it's a well-founded entity that is a major partner in what we're trying to do with the Legal Resource Center. The Legal Resource Center is an official MLH, Michigan Legal Help affiliated self-help center. With that became an agreement in 2022. We're starting to build toward modifying this this self-help center in the law library. As a affiliated center, there are certain benchmarks that would have to be met. One of those is being a space convenient to the public. This will, of course, be located on the second floor of the circuit court building, circuit court courthouse. Have multiple workstations, designate one or more navigators to staff the center, and provide Michigan Legal Help resources and materials to users. So that's just but one of the many important partners in this self-help movement. As part of a Michigan Legal Help affiliated center, there are certain data that would be required to be obtained, and these are just a couple informative slides on some of the data that we're compiling from those who enter the center area. This is a major component of being a Michigan Legal Help Center, but also it helps us craft and modify the center to respond to the folks that we serve. And our preliminary data has showed a number of those who enter the center are focused on family, law matters, domestic relations matters. So that's, of course, what we're going to modify and craft some more resources toward. We're trying to be intentional, data-driven, and craft the center in a way that we can, use different resources and allocate different resources based on subject matter, the type of person that we're trying to serve, and things of that nature. So we're being really intentional and data-driven about how we're trying to help the public. This last slide in my area is just gives you kind of a visual representation of the collaboration involved in the center, and specifically the circuit court, probate court, their focus on trying to provide resources and information for the public in a manner that we haven't done before, that we frankly need to do. The center, at its genesis, we were fortunate enough to receive a $100,000 grant from the Michigan Supreme Court. We received an additional $75,000 grant in the present fiscal year, and applications will open shortly for a 24-25 grant, all focused on building up this center and augmenting our self-help resources in the county. So we're very excited, like Mr. Mayor said, Judge Glenn said, and I'm going to turn it now over to the Court IT Director, David Combs, and Tony McDowell. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Barb's going to jump in here for a second.
Oh, she is. She's just coming up here. This next slide is the visual representation of many weeks and months working with architects and stakeholders to arrive at a design plan. I'm going to just briefly walk you through this. For example, what is depicted in blue, if you start at the lower left corner, you'll find a space that's referred to as the mediation office and the mediation room. We do what is called case evaluation and mediation on civil cases in the circuit court. That is largely with attorneys who are representing litigants on those matters. That continues. The lawyers are not being eliminated from what is the law library and will be the legal resource center. It's just that the focus is changing, but they're still, of course, welcome to use the facility and will need to. So the large conference room that you see on the left-hand side will have a glass front, and it's going to be sort of bowed, if you will. And the idea is all of the spaces in here will not be closed off with doors. We're trying to open things up so that when you enter the space, it's welcoming. There are people to receive you. There's information that you can easily obtain yourself, or we will have navigators to assist you. So that conference room will be somewhat of a focal point, and we'll get to the visioning board as we go further. The other blue spaces are essentially what we're going to call hotel offices. It's nobody's office in particular. You know, there's no family photos and diplomas, et cetera. It's if somebody needs to use that space, whether it's a lawyer talking to a client, whether it's just someone who's self-represented and who has a family member with them and they need a little bit of a private space to review some materials or fill out some materials, or you'll hear later about the kiosks that they'll be able to use. So again, the presence of glass and openness will be present in those offices. On the Court Street side, sort of in the right-hand corner, you see county clerk with sort of a circular desk or a L-shaped desk. That's where personal protection orders will be sought. Right now, they go to what we call the clerk's office, if you will, the legal records division, stand at a bank teller window and bare your soul about what happened to you last night, which causes you to think you need an order preventing someone from being near you. It's a much better arrangement to have sort of a semi-private space where you can share what those circumstances were and receive assistance to fill out the paperwork. Even occasionally, photographs have to be taken on site and other sort of demonstrative evidence of the circumstances. So this was very important, and Mr. Clemens was an absolutely fantastic partner in visioning that this is better served as a clerk function in the Legal Resource Center as opposed to at the point of filing for other matters with the court. So moving around to the right, someday there'll be a director. That's an existing office. And then the other two offices, which are labeled the YMCA and Legal Services, those are existing offices, but we won't have staff in there. Those will, again, be available for those partners to come on site and provide services. The orange space in the middle, again, it's intentionally round, it's intentionally welcoming. We will have two paralegals located there, sort of where that red star is, would be the access point and the point of initial intake, if you will, and the two offices. Behind that are three more spaces for the public to use with sort of a built-in desk, kind of small, but you might be able to connect to a court proceeding there. You might be able to connect to the friend of the court. In Tony's shop, somebody might be on deck to provide assistance on particular matters. Maybe the Y will decide we can only have somebody there Monday and Wednesday, but the other days we'll have somebody able to connect to speak with someone about our services. When you go back to the first red star, that's actually the point of access. And I've shared this with many. I know I've shared it with Dr. Brown, but right now those two doors look like you're going into a courtroom. It's a little intimidating, to be honest with you. If you're there by yourself, you don't know what to do. You know you have an emotional situation, oftentimes a family situation. Where am I going to sleep tonight? Where are my kids going to eat tonight? And I got to face two doors, and I'm scared. They're going to be all glass. That will be all glass. So when a potential user of the Legal Resource Center approaches the center, the doors are glass, the doors are welcoming, they don't look like a courtroom, and there'll be glass down the hallway to the extent that we're able. There are some restrictions on what we can do, but it's open. So when we get to the visioning board, somewhere further down in the presentation, I'm going to speak to you a little bit more about round and glass. So remember that, and when I come back, I'll follow up. Thank you.
Don't call me twin.
Hello, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the electronic PPO process that we developed with help from County IT. On April 29th, we went live with that process. Previously, a clerk would have to visit each judicial office several times a day to grab paperwork, pick it up, and drop it off. Now that process is all electronic. So when somebody comes in to file their PPO, the clerk will scan it, Once they scan it, it gets imported directly into OnBase. Once that happens, the judicial office automatically receives an email letting them know that a filing has been created. The benefit of that is that the judge can perform any markups or signing or anything they do on a paper form of it, they can now do electronically. They can approve or deny. If they deny it, an electronic version of the denial is sent directly to the petitioner via email with an attachment of that denial. If they approve it, it's sent to the sheriff's department to be entered into lien immediately, and a copy of the approved PPO also goes to the petitioner, letting them know that it has been approved. This process greatly increases the efficiency from what was previously a boots-on-the-ground kind of environment that was set up. And as Barb mentioned, our goal is to have the PPO clerk stationed in the Legal Resource Center for private matters and things that can be not very apparent that you want to bring up in a public eye setting. I think that's you, Barb. Yeah.
I just want to follow up on what Mr. Combs said, because the electronic workflow associated with the personal protection order is a really big deal if you're seeking a personal protection order. Judges have 24 hours to review those, to say thumbs up, thumbs down, but a decision has to be made. So if you can eliminate a clerk running around to, 10 judicial offices in the morning to see if they signed them from the day before, going back the late morning to drop off the new ones, going back in the afternoon to pick up the ones that might have got signed that morning, and then at the end of the day dropping off the new ones, you have just captured time that that person can spend doing something else. So we've tried to eliminate that inefficiency. Secondly, if you're someone who petitioned for a personal protection order, you're waiting all day to find out, aren't you? Did they sign it? Did they sign it? Did they sign it? Am I going to get the order? Am I not going to get the order? We didn't have a process in place. When we inherited the clerk's office, I should say, there was no process in place. So random calls would be made to any office that would answer a phone call. Judges' offices, my office, everywhere. Do you know if it got signed yet? Really, not where you want to land. Let's just leave it there. So now there is an email with permission of the petitioner that is sent to them the moment that is signed. So they know when we know. I mean, just can't get any better than that. The visioning board will be my last remarks, but of course it's an interesting one because it's a visual of not only the color scheme, but it's a visual of more or less what the hotel office space looks like. So it gives you an idea. It's kind of glass and metal, and it's kind of hip and happening, and it looks like we're trying to be a part of the next generation of what a court should do. The lights, I'm going to take a little personal credit for the lights, or if you don't like them, I guess you can blame me. But my idea was, in the fishbowl sort of conference center, why do we have to have the traditional lights? Why do they have to look like you're in a doctor's office or somewhere else? Couldn't we have something architecturally interesting that also lends itself to the notion we're trying to get rid of corners? We're trying to get people out of the corners and into the flow of providing them help. So it was intentional that we're trying to use circular lighting where we can. There'll be some additional lighting, not as grandiose as that, but part of that family of lights over some of the kiosk stations in the courthouse. So you've got the brains of it, if you will, in the middle, that's circular. You've got the lights, which sort of perpetuate that notion, and you've got glass, which says, come in, right? We're here to help you. So instead of saying, what do you want to do? It's what can I do for you? It's really quite different, isn't it, when you think about it? So if you go to the point of filing, what do you want to file? It's not really as nice as, glad to see you. What are we going to do for you today? So it'll take time for everybody to think differently and work differently. But the space is going to lay the foundation for the mindset that we're trying to create and perpetuate. And personally, I feel really good about it. I want to tell you, the staff has embraced it. Again, I go back to Dom Clements and Judge Newblack, because they were the two that agreed that the Legal Records Division would be part of the court. And we are communicating to them that they're important to this process. They're our ambassadors to the public, and we need them to join us on this. So those are my last remarks on designed, and then Mr. McDowell has one of the most important parts to share with you about the kiosks.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. So we went with those 13,000 volumes of books that nobody was cracking, and then we're going to go to kiosks, which will be all-in-one computers where people will be able to access all of that information that they probably were not accessing from those books, and they'll be able to access them from these devices. So when we looked at the design earlier, we saw some opportunities for kiosks. We're going to have 7 kiosks within the space. And those 7 kiosks are going to be at kind of 3 different tier levels of access. One, right up at the front counter where a paralegal will be able to assist you if you need more hands-on assistance. 3, that will be an eyesight of that paralegal. So if you're working on your own, but maybe you need help sometimes, you'll be able to have somebody that you could be able to get a little bit of assistance from very quickly. And then 3 for our more savvy users, where they'll be able to go back into an enclosed space, maybe deal with some things for an extended period of time, or maybe they'll be attending a hearing virtually, and that will be an opportunity where they could put on headphones and they could attend that hearing virtually, be on video, have a webcam, all of those sorts of things. Maybe they're filling out some legal forms that way. One of the things that we recognize now after we have the data, after collecting all this data, is that many of the folks who are using this space now are our clients, are people who have family law cases, which is where we, at the front of the court, spend our time. And we want to be able to connect with those families without them having to walk down to the McCree building to get our assistance. So our goal is to be able to make it so you can see here, this is the kiosk. If you go, this is what it will look like if you were to go on that main screen of the kiosk and you check in. That first option is join a video meeting with a referee or a court hearing. So maybe you have a court hearing in front of a judge, you'd be able to click that button and then find that judge and attend that hearing that way. Maybe you'd like to have maybe you have a referee hearing with one of our 4 referees down at the McCree building. Instead of having to hoof it down there, you can join at that point. Or eventually, maybe you want to meet with one of our alternative dispute resolution caseworkers over at the front of the court. We do over 1,000 consent orders every single year for families with family law cases, and you'll be able to connect with them in real time and be able to get those issues resolved. So that's really a way that we're going. But that second box, help with my legal issue, will hopefully be all those 13,000 volumes that we used to have, it's all through that button now. You don't need to go rifling through things. We're going to make it easy, accessible, and it's going to be relevant for the types of things that people are coming to the Legal Resource Center for. Then on community resources, we're going to be connecting with all of our community partners, YWCA, those sorts of organizations that we work with, legal services, but also every county department. We're going to be lifting up our county departments to make sure that families and other individuals who come to use this space will be able to get access directly to other county departments and get the resources that they need. And then, of course, finally, the real boring one, filling out legal forms. We got to do it. It's part of the business, but we're going to make that an option too. One of the things that we're really excited about is we're working with a company called A2J. They put in legal kiosks all over the country. They have done it in Michigan. They've done it in Texas. They've done it all over the country. And we are the first organization that has ever come up with the briefcase function. So we have created a briefcase function so that if you want to save something for later, it's kind of like your cart. Clearly, I use a lot of Amazon, so that was, my brain was immediately, how can I save things for later? And so that's what we're going to have that feature so that you may have started something and you want to maybe finish that later, you're going to be able to save that in your briefcase. And so we're really excited about that. But one of the things that we're also really excited about is while we've been working on this project, unbeknownst to us, Michigan Supreme Court Justice Zara had an interview done, and he was talking about how, as he is the commissioner for the Justice for All Commission for the state of Michigan, he was talking about how we're trying to make the court system more accessible, not just for families, but for anyone, making the court system more accessible. This is a quote from a recent article that happened at the end of April. He said, perhaps one day we'll even put kiosks in the courthouses that will help people understand their rights. His future vision board is what's happening in Genesee County right now. So when the Justice for All Commission gets together and they're dreaming about what could potentially be, That's happening right here in Genesee County right now. We are ahead of the curve, and we're not just putting kiosks out in the community for people to have to work through it on their own. We're making sure that they have the human support, which I think is truly the Genesee County way, that we are advancing technology, but we're also taking that one step further to say there will be a human who will assist you and will walk you through this. So truly, we are now providing that Justice for All component. That is the dream of the Justice for All Commission, and that's happening here in Genesee County, and we're really proud of it and really happy for all of your support and attention this morning. Thank you.
Does anybody wish to make a comment or a question? Well, I would personally, throughout my time here, I've always enjoyed and appreciated working with the judges in the circuit court over there, the staff we've seen over and over, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And Judge Newblatt, it's always a pleasure for you to come down here and speak. But our society is ever evolving, and the legal system is probably evolving faster. And I appreciate you guys taking the lead in making that happen, making the legal system more accessible to the average person. And I'm impressed with the program.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I too want to just add my thanks to Barb, Sam, Dave, Tony, and Clerk Clemens and Judge Newblatt for being so forward-thinking with this. I love that you made decisions based on data, so you have some baseline data to consider. I love the contemporary lights, Barb. The circles are just wonderful. Automation equals efficiency, and I think that this is probably a gold standard of continuous improvement that we need to see. And so I really just applaud you for the work and the efforts with this.
Commissioner Holmberg?
Mr. Chair, I'm wowed. I mean, it's just sounds so technical, but then so simple. And especially with the assistance. I mean, everything is moving faster than me. But, you know, it's so nice to have someone there to hold your hand if you do need to go through the process. And anyway, I'm very impressed. I'm excited, so. And if you need round lights, I think we may have some.
Yeah, Mr. William.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions, if I might, and these are going to be all over the place, so I'm not sure who the appropriate person is. I guess the first is an observation that currently it seems like the vast majority of your clients are women. Am I right? Based on the data that you showed? Like 60-some percent, 70%. And most of the issues that they're looking into are the family law issues. Is that fair to say? And then you had the one slide was all about PPOs. I imagine that those are disproportionately women who are seeking those. Am I drawing the right conclusion there?
We're tracking, yes.
Okay.
Accurate, yeah.
And overall, the service is for civil issues, not criminal. Is that right?
Correct.
Is there anything in the county similar to this that addresses criminal defendants and their needs? People that are in the jail, for example, or?
So I thought we were going family, so I hopped up, but then
I'm jumping all over the place. Sorry about that.
you got me, Commissioner.
And I don't have a pen to write down my
The Public Defender's
questions.
Office is, I would say, the perfect example of the space where, for criminal cases, is, you know, that's where the Public Defender's Office really comes in. And we've really, to the point of the family component, we've really moved our resources in a way to recognize this need. So we were probably more enforcement heavy in the past as our friend of the court duties, and we are recognizing that a lot of families need mediation, they need alternative dispute resolution, they need somebody to talk to and work through these issues. And so we've devoted a lot more time, attention, and resources in that space so that we can attempt to resolve these issues without bogging down the court system. Most family law issues do get resolved through resolution, so we were really focusing our time and energy on that family side of things to see that we can actually make it easier, but also connecting to these necessary resources. So the YWCA is a perfect example. We have supervised visitation programming in Genesee County that's been very successful with decades of not having that. And so those are resources that when you step up to that kiosk, you're going to be able to connect to those resources.
Yeah, I would thank you for that. I would make the observation that, we have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion at the countywide level, and there's a commission that's working on that. But as we see data points that show, to me, vulnerable women, low income, that was another thing I took away from the slide, really need resources in our community. So I applaud what you're doing, but as a commission, we need to think about other programming that we have in front of us or could be in front of us that can assist these same folks. For example, last week we approved $12 million for Head Start. The women that are using your services could also benefit from that to lift themselves up with our assistance. So,
For certain. I was just going to mention that, there are two orbs in the law. One is the criminal and one is the civil. And there is no right to counsel on a civil case. That's the difference, in essence, between the criminal side and the civil side. So you can have poverty level income, but you have no right to counsel on a domestic matter. And Legal Services of Eastern Michigan has very specific criteria that are not only related to your income level, but they don't have the staff, frankly, to service all of the people that would fall in that income level. So they refine it even narrower to income level, yes, domestic case, yes, but there has to be domestic violence, or there has to be child abuse or something. So their window is getting narrower and narrower in terms of their constituency that they can serve. So that's the civil side, including domestic. But on the criminal side, the public defender office's mission, of course, is to fulfill those responsibilities because there is the constitutional right to counsel. Right. So we applaud them, I honor them. I've worked in that sphere for a very long time myself. But the mission of Michigan Legal Help is
civil,
uniquely civil, and so stated. Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons I asked that, Commissioner Lloyd and I had the opportunity to tour the jail some months ago, and there was at least one inmate who approached us, obviously criminal situation. They had been there for 13 months without a hearing in a district court. And I don't blame the public defender's office at all. It sounds like the backlog or the issue is at the district court level, that they're not moving these along. And I realize that's not the topic today, but it's of concern to me that people don't have access to resources and their rights in that regard. Let me just ask one last question. So the kiosks are permanent stations in the space. Does the navigator have the ability to take a laptop and go into the community, say at a resource fair, and do the same work at a resource fair, or does it have to happen in that space?
Right now, it has to happen in that space. I don't know exactly where we'll evolve this over time, but the two navigators that are located there also have jobs related to other court work, if you will. So we're sort of a fledgling staffing level at this point. And as demand and resources permit, I think that's a great idea, but it's not going to be the launch idea.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Wayhill, because I had similar sentiment, because actually I'd assumed before the clarity that it also dealt with folks that are dealing with criminal situations, because people, our residents, they have the right to represent themselves if that is their choice. But a lot of times when folks are representing themselves, they're really, truly left out there by themselves, and most times they aren't successful. And so to be able to prioritize providing them some additional support because it is their right, I think is very, very important. So I'll just say that I love this. I think it's absolutely amazing. And anything I can do to be supportive, I look forward to doing so. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Judge, and thank you, everybody else, for coming down. Appreciate you.
Might I say, Commissioner, that
Yes.
Derek Jones advised me that the bids are poised to go out May 21 for the construction phase. So we've worked through that, and we expect the mandatory pre-bid, I think, is June 13th, and bids to be submitted no later than June 27th. So we're online for the next kickoff here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Barb.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
two questions. One question, what is the estimated time you think it, is for the project to be completed and folks to be able to move into the space? That's my first question. My second question is, not totally remember the configuration of that space. Does that include the space that Clerk Clemens' office originally was in, or is that a different space?
Okay, your first question is how long? I ask that multiple times a week. I'm an impatient person. But I'm told it's in the 9-month range from May 21. Of course, you have to, depending on the contractor who selected where he or she can put it in line to start. But all things being equal, about 9 months, number one. And number two, the project that we're involved in now, the main project is the court law library being converted to the Legal Resource Center. Mr. Clemens' space that we took over in the beginning of the year, now called the Legal Records Division, formerly called the clerk's office, quote unquote, is a very small part of this in terms of what small additions we're doing there, but the two are married together. So when a citizen goes to file something, but instead says, how do I do this? Now there's not much place they can feel like they're gonna constructively send them for the high level of help we're gonna provide. So they're interrelated. And Heather Davis, who is the new manager of the public engagement and court operations piece in the former clerk's office, will have a very close connection with the director. So they're very related,
Thank you.
very, yes.
Okay, all set? Okay, thank you very much. I don't think we have any other communications, do we?
No.
No old business I'm aware of. New business. Looking for a motion for Resolution 24-465, forwarding to receive and file a copy of the second quarter FY 23-24 investment report.
So moved. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I just wanted to let you know that for the investment report today, we also have Michael Kloak here from Meter Investment, in case any of you have any questions. Michael, did you want to say, and he had a few comments, and I wanted to make sure that was okay.
absolutely.
All right, thanks.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to thank you for having me. It's been about 16 months since I was here last, so I just wanted to provide you with a brief update as to what we're seeing, and I promise I'll make it very brief, from an economic and a market standpoint, and what we are doing, Deb's team and our team, to address what we're seeing in the economy with the market and so forth. First things first, inflation is stubbornly hanging on. Anybody that has watched news stories at all in the last 3 months has seen that the inflation reports are simply refuse to go down. We had the producer price index, which is at one end of the pipeline, went up a little bit last week. The consumer price index went down a little this week. That report just came out about an hour ago. But inflation is just not going away the way that we had thought it would with these price hikes, which were coincidentally the fastest rate hikes that we've ever had in an economic rate cycle in 40 years. So they took very drastic action to try and mitigate inflation. It is not, as of yet, working the way that they wanted it to. The Fed has been on record for stating that they are looking for a sustained period of control of inflation before they start lowering the rates. And why that's important to us is because that affects the overnight rates. It affects the bank accounts, the liquid funds, the money markets, things like that, and affects other things out further from a yield perspective on the curve. So the result of all this is that we've changed very drastically the outlook from just 3 months ago. At the beginning of this year, both the Fed and the markets were predicting and projecting 7 rate hikes this year. That was as of December 31st. As of today, we're down to somewhere, and it changes on an hour-to-hour basis, quite frankly. We're down to anywhere from one rate hike to potentially, or excuse me, one rate cut to potentially two this year. We're even starting to hear certain Fed governors say that they may not look for a rate cut at all this year. So what that is going to mean is that is going to increase the amount of time that we are able to enjoy the rates that we're at now, especially on things like overnight funds. In the reports that you received, you noticed that probably that the ARPA funds are yielding the best out of the four portfolios. The reason for that is that the ARPA funds are being managed much shorter. So those are yielding over 5%. And we work very closely with Crystal's office to determine when and if those ARPA funds can be reinvested after the first set. So on the operating fund level, we have been working at looking at extending out part of the portfolio a little bit longer to try and capture these high yields that we have for a little bit longer period, to increase that return over 4 to 5 years versus just 3, which is the way that we were managing it, previously. Our current Fed rate outlook is about 5.25 to 5.5. Current Fed rate, the 12-month outlook is 4.69, and then the 24-month outlook is 4%. So the markets right now are looking for the rate cuts to come back down more gradually than they were a year ago. And that will cause us to have to reevaluate the outlook for longer-term investments, which is part of the process that we're doing. And I believe somebody had a question about something they saw in one of the ARPA accounts, correctly? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was looking at the investment return or the gross interest earnings for the ARPA portfolio, and it looks like we had $194,000 in interest earnings. I wondered if what happens with that interest on the ARPA money? Do we get to reinvest that, or do we get to transfer that into the general fund, and so it becomes unrestricted money? What happens with the interest for ARPA?
Generally speaking, and I'm not the expert at this is more of a legal question and a question for Crystal's office, but, and here's Deb. Generally speaking, though, you get to keep your ARPA earnings, and those can be put towards non-ARPA related needs. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah,
Well, there she is.
Yeah, typically grant dollars, if you earn interest, it is restricted, but there was a Q&A in the ARPA specific funds that says it is unrestricted, so we keep it. You also had a question, Dr. Brown, on how much interest we've earned on the ARPA money since inception. It was just over $3 million.
Thank you.
Sure.
And then finally, I believe there was a question about the last security in the portfolio, the question of its yield. Without having it in front of me, the securities, when we buy a security, we buy it first with the maturity, which is to say the amount of time that we want to make that investment in mind. And then we find the best yielding security within the marketplace that's available at the time. So I don't know, the 4.75 that I believe was asked about, I believe it is the interest rate, not necessarily the yield, excuse me. Sometimes those are different things. But that would have been the best yielding investment we would have found for when we did the purchases at the time. Okay?
Thank you.
If I could just say that we've been very pleased with the work of the Meter Investment Group and the help that they've given us in improving the rate of return that we're getting from our investments. Thank you.
Any other questions for me? Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 24-469, approval of a request to create post and fill one Operations Manager VSO position at Genesee County's Department of Veteran Services.
I'll move it.
Support.
Could we have the Colonel come up and explain this, please?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this, and thank you for your faith in my appointment. It's been 10 months, going on 10 years. Joke. No, it's been great. Great staff down there. So, the 10 months I've been on the job is giving me a chance to do a deep dive into processes, procedures, roles, responsibilities, and areas of improvement in the department. So, I'm proposing these positions that would, and that's the first and the second resolution there, to help streamline, processes that we have, clear up some chain of command issues that we have had from previous administrations. And it will also allow me to have more of a strategic focus on, long-term goals. Right now, in my 10 months, I've been, in the weeds, just trying to learn everybody's, roles. So, yeah, internal processes, customer service, financial issues, all things that these two positions would help to iron out some things that we've had. I did have a PowerPoint up there. I sent it to Leah. No? Okay. She asked me to send it, but any questions about?
Anybody have any questions? Rico.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to be supporting this. Question, how many staff people do you have in your office?
There are 10 total.
10 total.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chair. Thank you, Derek. Is there supposed to be an additional position on here that is not?
It's the second, I'm sorry, number 3.
Oh, item 3. I see. Oh, the communications role. Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question about the one where we have a motion. The VSO position is part of operations manager, so it'll be both of those things?
Correct. That person would be required to carry out roles as a VSO, know those responsibilities, but not have the full caseload as a regular VSO.
I see. So their primary responsibility would be the operations manager piece of it?
Correct.
And that gets at the chain of command
Yes.
issues. I'll just say that I think it's great that we have someone who will be essentially cross-trained to be a VSO when, so you can add capacity in that area. And I know that we're, there's fits and starts, but I think we're headed in the right direction with the Veterans Resource Hubs, 2 of which are in my district. And it's important to me that we continue to offer that service and allow the veterans to be served where they feel most comfortable, in their home community and not by phone or remotely. And so the way I see this is that we're adding capacity to be able to do that. If someone is sick or someone wants to go on vacation, this person could take up the slack. Is that a fair?
That's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 24-471, approval of request to create, post, and fill 1 partnerships and communication specialist at Genesee County's Department of Veteran Services. The request will eliminate the outreach administrator.
Move it. Forward.
Okay, is there any other questions? I think he kind of already did that, but any other? Go ahead, Mr. Lloyd.
This isn't for you, I'm all set. More so for the board. So I understand the partnerships piece in terms of having someone to kind of focus on that. But I want to hone in on this communication specialist piece. Now, when, I kind of shared when we hired Jared that when we brought that position online and other positions, if nobody else has questions for you, you're good. I raised at that time just kind of a fundamental piece about directors versus coordinators and how we title individuals that, and it's relevant, and I'll show you how we title individuals who work here at the county. I believe that department directors are those that are appointed by this body, those who essentially report to this body, but liaison work with our director of administration versus coordinators. We've created additional positions that are reported to Mr. Freeman. And Jared's title is a director, which I fundamentally have an issue with that. But when we start talking about adding communications folks to other departments, I believe that, you know, we'd be better suited to have a communications department here at the county, where if Jared's the director, and then if we need to add additional staff to it for the county as a whole, and where we have various departments that have communications needs, that then they're plugging in their liaison and with that overall department whose focus is on communications for the entire county. I raise this because my concern is I'm not going to be supportive of then starting putting individual communications people in individual departments, because where does it then start? We're doing it now for the Veterans Department, which I understand there's a need, but communicate, the HR department, there's things that they have to communicate, and so on and so forth with other departments that are, that serve our residents. And so I just want to raise it. I think we should have a conversation about it. If there's a broader communications need, I think we need to consider what staffing looks like, what funding looks like, and not piecemeal it, but address it overall. And then I'll close with what I started with. I have a fundamental issue with us not keeping the lines separate as to who's considered a director level at the county and who's considered a coordinator, and how our office is staffed. You know, who's reporting to Josh Freeman, which there's a need for staff. I don't have issue with that. I understand what's happening, but we need to have a differentiation, in my opinion, about what that looks like. That's my comments on this.
Else wish to make a comment?
Mr. Chair.
Wayhill.
So I guess a similar, something similar occurred to me as I was looking at this. We do have a communications director for the full county in Jared Field. Is it Field or Fields? Field. So what is the strategy, or what's the rationale, I guess is a better way of saying it, of having communications specialists in departments and not a communications department like a lot of organizations might have?
You know, before Mr. Freeman answers that, I guess I think we're getting off the track a little bit. I understand what you guys are, you and Mr. Lloyd are saying, and maybe that would be better handled at a workshop meeting where we set up that line of protocol, if you will, and rather than at this point in time. But go, Mr. Freeman, did you have something you wanted to say?
The reason why departments have communication persons or employees is because the board would never create a communications department. So in all things at the county, we've created silos and they've done their own thing, and the board didn't want to create a communications department but allowed departments to create a communications position. This is an existing position within that department that does this work, that outreach work. And I think that what they're doing is just reassigning duties for this position and taking some responsibilities away in partnership with the resolution that was previously passed. I agree that the county should have a central communications office that is directing and is ensuring that departments are pushing the brand of the county that this Board of Commissioners creates. And that's something that I'll probably be pushing more as we get into budget season. But I think in this instance, this position and this work is already being done within that department. And I think it should be continued to be done in this department for what they're doing. So this person is interfacing with volunteer groups. This person is interfacing with like the VFWs and the American Legions. This person is setting up outreach events where they're having veterans come in and like coffee or with a VSO type of events. So it's really more of a partnership piece than it is a total communications. And then in addition to that, Jared is interfacing with these communication folks, so whether it be with the parks or with veterans, to ensure that the Board of Commissioners message and what the Board of Commissioners is trying to convey to the public is what's being conveyed through those lines.
follow-up.
Okay, Mr. Lloyd.
Couple things. Number one, thank you so much for the explanation, even more as to the details of what this person will be doing. I can support that. I'll be supportive. But I think all of the things that we shared is relevant to the discussion. It's not off the beating path. I disagree. I don't think it's getting in the weeds. And I'm not in favor of having every intentional discussion we have take place in a workshop setting. We're a public body. These meetings are televised, and I'm in favor of more, and I'm going to be talking about it more, that we do more of our business in the public setting. And I know those meetings are posted, but I think it's totally appropriate to raise things that are relevant. So I want to say those things in this setting. The other thing I wanted to say was that the interface in terms of the partnerships is different from communications. You understand what I'm saying? And when it comes to that, just because we have positions that exist in departments whereby they're doing that does not mean that we should automatically, that we should continue it just because it's an existing position. And I believe that we have the responsibility outside of having a county executive, outside of having a mayor of the county as the pseudo mayors of Genesee County, for us to have discussions at each point to determine how we believe as one votes on this body that we should proceed as it relates to these. So I do look forward to supporting any resolution for the most part that you bring about establishing a communications department, a true communications department. I look forward to Jared as the director of the department being a direct report of this body as a director, just as all of our other directors, and us equipping him at the appropriate time with the tools that he needs to be able to fulfill, because Jared's awesome, and I'm sure he has ideas about how we can communicate overall. Here's my last point. Every department of the county the department heads serve at the pleasure of this body, and they are doing the work that they do on behalf of the residents, but on our behalf as county commissioners. And so I wanted to say that because, again, I think that ties into Jared being our point person, communicating for all departments based on what the will and perspective of this body is. I don't have any more further comments on this.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Is there anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 24-472, approval of request to create, post, and fill one deputy treasurer, chief deputy treasurer position in Genesee County's Treasury Office. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Resolution 24-490, forwarding to receive and file a copy of the paid county bills for the weeks ending 4/21/24 and 4/28/24 in the total amount of $10,272.60 or $272,060.31.
I move we pay our bills.
Is there any discussion on the bills? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Resolution 24-498, approval of proposed budget amendment to the 23-24 appropriations resolution for various line items as described in the attached budget adjustment request.
Support.
Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Resolution 24-530, approval of agreement between Genesee County and Habitat for Humanity in an amount not to exceed $445,830 to provide for the construction of 3 housing units and the rehabilitation of 1 housing unit.
Support.
We have that. I assume this is under planning. Could somebody from planning come up and explain this? You need to sit closer to the front line.
I know, I apologize, but I did run. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Habitat for Humanity, we partner with them on our home projects. These are for low to moderate income, typically families. If you're familiar with Habitat, there's kind of a process to be selected, right? You have to put your sweat equity in, all those type of things as part to get one of these houses. 3 of them are in Flint Township, one's in Mount Morris. They've had to juggle the addresses, so originally when we approved this, we had some different addresses, but like everything else, when you're trying to put deals and projects together, they've had to move some addresses around. Primarily, that's the biggest change from when they originally applied back in 2022 with this. And then last, we have affordability periods on both of these, so new construction is 20 years, and then rehabilitation is 15 years. So we have liens on these properties, so if for whatever reason they get sold or something like that, they have to repay funds back. But excellent partner, Habitat. We've partnered with them on other things, and this is a really good project.
Yeah, they are an excellent partner, so I just wanted everybody to be updated on that. Is there any questions? Mr. Shoemaker?
Thank you, through the chair. When you say housing units, these are just single-family units?
Yes.
So my next question is, so this is just for materials? Is that what they're stating?
Yeah, so there are certain trades that they bring in, and as most people aware, Habitat relies a lot on volunteers and agencies come out and do that. Mostly materials, and then they have licensed plumbers, electricians as well on site, so it's materials and some labor. Because if you look at the cost, and I'm just simple numbers, right? $400 and some thousand divided by 4, you cannot build a house for $100,000, right? Like a house, a current house probably of this size is probably $200 to $260 to build.
Okay, so if I may continue, Mr. Chair. So what's the square footage on these houses?
I would have to take a look. They're usually 3 bedrooms.
Could you get it to me?
Yeah.
I'd appreciate
They're probably in the 1,000 to 1,200 square foot range, somewhere in that range.
Okay. So part of what the program's supposed to do is build affordable housing, because guess what? You're coming in. Now, if you're, and you said they're going to be built where again? Flint Township?
3 in Flint Township, 1 in Mount Morris.
Do you know whereabouts the ones in Flint Township? Can you
Yeah, I have
just send me the
addresses.
address? Would you
They're
send
in
the address?
Claremont Street. That's the one in Mount Morris. And then Parkway, another Claremont Street, and Neridia.
If I may continue, just so I know, because I'm trying to understand this, how do they determine where these houses are going to go?
So they actually work with lots of different local units to find properties, right? So usually they'll get properties just like anybody, potentially buy them, they're donated, potentially land bank as well. So we've done, Habitat's done properties throughout Genesee County. We've done some down in the city of Fenton, Mount Morris. I can get a list of all their different projects, but they've done throughout Genesee County.
And just the last thing, you said there's a process to determine who gets this.
Yes.
And can you elaborate a little more on the process? Is it something all of our residents, if they're struggling, could actually apply for? Or?
Yeah, so anybody can apply to Habitat to be part of their program. They're a unique agency, right? And I don't want to speak on their behalf, but they go through a process to make sure that that person's ready for the house, and they have qualifications, and it's a whole process. I can get their detailed list, but it's not like you apply and you're in. It's they have to have so many hours of sweat equity and a whole bunch of different things before they get the house.
Thank you if you'd get that for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody else? Dr. Brown?
I had a question about, I know you guys are in the process of doing a housing assessment needs sort of survey and asking for feedback from all of the townships. Can you just give us an update on how that's going, so we have an idea, to what extent we have that data in order to make decisions about housing across the county?
Right. So we got an okay response rate. I wouldn't say a stellar one. So probably less than 50% kind of responded. The biggest, and I'll guess theme that I would kind of summarize is that some of the communities responded really didn't know specifically what they were actually looking for in housing. They're interested, but, you know, in most communities, those housings are generated by a developer, right? A developer approaches the township and says, I want to build single family, I want to build multifamily, those type of things. And so most of the communities, not all, really just kind of were like, we know there's a housing issue out there, but, you know, that's not something we've necessarily really dealt with. And most of the responses are more, we would love more housing, but, you know, it's 99% generated by developers internally saying, we have this piece of property, we want it rezoned and developed. So that's probably, I think, the crux of the issue is, you know, how do you invigorate housing when the only housing that you're typically coming for most in the county are houses that are 350,000 and above, right? And one of the reasons for that is the cost to build a house, you know, just a house is to 260 range, right? Just for a smaller type house. So if you're a developer or a builder that's coming in, your market that you're targeting is going to be a higher end house. And so when we look at the number of housing units that are going in Genesee County, and those responses, they're typically $300,000, $400,000 houses. There's not any housing for the most part that's coming in that, you know, for what I call working, you know, if I'm a school teacher, I'm a police officer, you know, I want to buy my first house, there isn't that house out there in that 200,000, 180, 240 range. And then the used housing market is kind of all over the place too.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate that was one of the themes that we heard from the symposium that we had about a month ago, is that there is a deep need for affordable housing that may not look like single-family homes. And we need to remember in this community, in this state, in this country, the sacrifices that essential workers put forth during the pandemic. And we need to take care of those individuals who are essential workers by making available affordable housing for them, especially if we plan on expanding economic development opportunities in this region. We need to really put on our thinking caps about how we solve that problem.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Thank you, Derek. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I don't think we have any other business. I adjourn this meeting at 10:15. Thank you.
The Governmental Operations Committee to order at this time. We have before us first approval of the minutes from the May 1st meeting. Roll call. Mr.
Commissioner Lloyd?
President.
Commissioner Winfrey?
Here.
Commissioner Ellenberg?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Avery?
Here.
Commissioner Shoemaker?
Present.
Commissioner Kuzma?
Here.
Commissioner Wayhill? Commissioner Davis?
Here.
All right, Commissioners, what is your pleasure as it relates to the approval of the minutes?
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting have been approved. Is there any public comment for this committee meeting? Any public comment for this committee meeting? Any public comment for this committee meeting? Public comment period is closed. We've already had the communications from the Legal Resource Center. Is there any old business?
No old business.
No old business. First resolution before us is Resolution 2024-457, approval of a request to increase a purchase order to Covetrus North America for fiscal year ending 2025, an amount not to exceed $55,000 for a revised total of $110,000 to continue providing surgical and medical supplies at Genesee County's Animal Control. What is your pleasure?
Move it.
Support.
All right, this item has been moved and supported. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, the motion on this resolution has passed. Next before us, we have resolution number 2024, excuse me, 481, approval of an agreement between Genesee County and West Publishing Corporation in an amount not to exceed $168,555 to provide for electronic legal research. What is your pleasure?
Move it.
Support.
All right, this item has been moved and supported. Any discussion on the same? All right, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, this item, the motion passes. Resolution 2024-488, approval of request by Genesee County's Community Corrections to apply for a grant in the amount of $631,000 from the Michigan Department of Corrections Office of Community Corrections for fiscal year 2025. The purpose of this grant is to provide for administration and programming. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Support.
All right, this item has been moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Resolution 2024-492, approval of an extension to the lease agreement for the attorney-client conference space in Mount Morris. What is your pleasure?
So move.
All right, it's been moved. Any support? All right, support from Commissioner Ellenberg. Any discussion on this item? Commissioner Ellenberg.
Okay, on this, conference, I guess, client conference that we have in Mount Morris, so this will be done on a month-to-month basis?
Okay, we have our public defender here who can answer
Good
questions.
morning. Yes, it would be a month to month, but it's based on our grant, which would be a yearly grant. So we would pay them month to month out of that yearly grant, out of those yearly grant funds.
Okay, because we haven't received, whether that court's going to go forward or any, so that's why we're doing it this way.
That is one of the reasons, that is one of the key reasons as to
All right,
why.
thank
But the money is allocated through the grant for the year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Cousineau.
That answered my question, thank you.
All right, any additional questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Our last resolution before us, Resolution 2024-510. Thank you, Public Defender. Approval to reallocate ARPA funds for the deputy and sergeant positions in the Office of the Sheriff's Deputy Department for tether activities. What's your pleasure?
So move.
All right, been moved, Commissioner Winfrey, supported by Commissioner Avery. Any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Do we have any other business before us? All right, before we adjourn this meeting, there is a discussion item I'd like to have some very brief discussion on. I passed out to everyone a beautiful communication that was received in our office by the Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission, and it's a flyer for public information that speaks to Genesee County Home Improvement Program and Urgent Repair Program. If someone is interested, they can contact 810-257-3010. Again, for public information, 810-257-3010. I'm using this as an example of something I want to talk about. I want to talk about the use of county logos. Certainly, this is one that we can talk about another time, but I want to raise this to you. Many residents, I've heard everywhere I've gone in the county, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, about residents not knowing what Genesee County Commissioners do. They're more familiar with the departments of the county than they are the county commissioner's responsibility and the time between the departments and our body, that those are departments of the county commission. And so I think the logos that we use and that department use, I think it matters. where it's not just a promotion of the department, but the residents see that there's a direct correlation between our responsibility as their county commissioners, the elected officials of the county, and the work that's completed by the departments. If you look on the front side of this that has the logos at the bottom, and this is not pointing out the Metropolitan Planning Commission, but this is just an example for discussion. The first logo that you see at the bottom of this is just the regular Genesee County, Michigan logo. It's a general Genesee County Commission logo. It's used by every department, treasurer's office, anybody can use it. Then you see other logos representing other things. And then to the right at the bottom, you see Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission, their own kind of unique logo. Absent from literature that goes out from departments is the mentioning of the Genesee County Commission. That's a concern of mine that I like to raise. My suggestion, and we don't have to make a decision now, but for us to think about, is that we consider mandating that every department uses a logo. If you look at the first logo at the bottom, Genesee County Commission to the left of the bottom, that we add to the bottom of that logo, Board of Commissioners, and that we mandate that every department of Genesee County that falls under the responsibility of the Genesee County Commission, that in any communications that they use, that they include a logo that, again, mentions Genesee County, but also has Board of Commissioners. And then we look at, which will be a process, if you go back to the right side of that document, where they are used the same logo, but they say Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Commission, that we look at having the departments go to a modified logo on their communications that just says Metropolitan Planning Commission, or it could be the Veterans Department, or whatever that looks like. So here's the point, and the reason why I raise it, so that anything that goes out to our residents as communications is not only reflective of the body who's responsible, Genesee County Board of Commissioners with our official logo, but then there's also a representation of that specific department so they know what department it is of the Genesee County Commission or of Genesee County. So I just want to raise that for consideration. If there's any initial thoughts, we can take 2 minutes literally and maybe mention that, but I'd like to have this item placed for discussion at some point where we can kind of discuss it more robust. Lastly, I believe this has been raised before. I know that you and I, Mr. Freeman, have discussed it. I know that there are other county commissioners at different times that have raised it, but I think we need to determine what it's going to be and then move forward and give our department some direction. Any questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, I look forward to this being on a discussion at some point where we actually, discuss it out. Okay, and then actually make a decision on this. Thank you. Is there anything else before this committee? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
To order, as soon as Josh gets back. Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Present.
Commissioner Winfrey?
Here.
Commissioner Ellenberg?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Avery?
Here.
Commissioner Shoemaker? Commissioner Kuzma? Commissioner Wayhill? Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Properly moved and supported. Any questions, comments, discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Are there any public comments to this committee? Any public comments to this committee? Any public comments to this committee? Hearing none, are there any communications?
No.
No old business. New business, Resolution 24483, approval of a request by Genesee County's Health Department to travel to the 2024 school-based hearing and vision screening programs 75th anniversary technician workshop in Acme, Michigan. Dates of travel are September 29th to October 1st, 2024. Total cost of travel for 7 staff members not to exceed $3,500. This is a budgeted expense.
Support.
Properly moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Resolution 24501, approval of a request by Genesee County's Community Action Resource Department to submit a supplemental application to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $267,729 for the 24-25 Head Start and Early Head Start program. Properly moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Resolution 24502, approval of a request by Genesee County's Community Action Resource Department to submit a supplemental application to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $55,187 for the 24-25 Early Head Start Expansion Program.
So moved.
Support.
Properly moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
Call this meeting to order at 10:32. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Lloyd?
Present.
Commissioner Winfrey?
Here.
Commissioner Ellenberg?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Avery? Commissioner Shoemaker? Commissioner Kuzma? Commissioner Wayhill?
Approval of the minutes for April 17th.
So moved.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any public comments? Any public comments? Third time, any public comments? Public comments closed. Communication, we have an update for broadband task force. Thank you.
Thank you for taking this time. I have a prop.
Okay.
I'll be explaining this prop in a moment. Commissioner Shoemaker, if you wouldn't mind, hold on to it for a few seconds, and then we'll get to that later. The Fiber Task Force was launched about 1 year ago, and this is our first report to this group about the status of that, the progress we've made, and where we might be going. This is a fairly impactful project if it comes to fruition. Quite exciting. I know that IT people have a reputation for doing techno gobbledygook and make people's eyes roll in the back of their head. So I promise you, I will speak regular English, and I'm only going to bring up 2 terms for you to memorize. And they're common terms, but there is something unique to the fiber world. I want to acknowledge Commissioner Brown for her involvement in this group. Her leadership has been absolutely vital to keeping us moving forward, and you have led. Thank you very much. Co-chair Bradshaw's here, and I have a few staff that are part of this as well. We have a good mixture of people around the community who are involved in this, someone from CS Mott College, a couple of township folks, and we're making some progress. This is a fairly complex project endeavor that we're taking on. So this particular presentation being the first, I'm not going to get into the weeds a lot. I think I'm going to give you enough to get an idea of what we've done, where we're going, and what possible future may lie. There are more unknowns than there are knowns. I'll tell you that. So I'm not going to have all the answers, just a lot of options and opportunities that we're going to be pursuing. There will be no ask today. There will be one coming up in a future meeting that we could not get in time done today from our particular vendor that we want to engage with. So I want to make sure that you're aware that that's at least not going to happen. This particular presentation, am I flipping? Great. I'm going to start with the evolution of the internet and computing, talk about how we connect to the internet, and some historical analogies to the electrification of America that happened in the early 19th century and the goals of the task force, the how, the whys and the hows. And so if you look back in the old golden days of the internet, the original days, you thought about, well, what's the internet for? And it was kind of cute, and you know, you could send emails back and forth, and you know, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan could meet at the top of the Empire State Building and have a date. And that's cool. And that was the internet. You didn't do much with it, but everyone thought there's something there. This is going back 20, 25 years. And if you fast forward to today, a little more about, you know, you bought a home computer, and they are tightly related. Back then, you may remember, if you're early adopters of computers, the thing everyone said, I want a computer for is, well, I'll store my recipes on it, and I might be able to do my taxes. And that's about it. And computers are standalone little things, big things, clunky things that you did one thing with. And there were many people who said, well, I got to be part of this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to get one because I don't want to miss out. And fast forward to today, where we have an environment that we could not have predicted 25 years ago. 20 years ago, if you ask yourself, well, you know, what am I going to do in the end? I'm going to buy a book. It's safe to buy a book, but I'm not going to buy a pair of shoes. I'm not going to buy a couch. You can do a lot of things on it, but I'll never see a doctor over the internet. And look at where we are today. And if you think about what that might look like 20 years from now, I will say that you can't imagine. You can imagine, sure. You can't predict. I can't predict. I do know that it'll be more profound than my imagination will let me go. I never would have thought 20 years ago that the fastest growing thing on the internet would be telehealth. Go see your doctor on the internet. Who knew? And so you have an indelible image that's left in all of our minds of what happened 2 years ago during COVID. When you see students, this is a picture, this is actually in California, that students were forced to do remote homework. And for those who didn't have an internet connection, well, they sat on the sidewalk outside of a Taco Bell or Starbucks or wherever they can get an internet connection to do their homework. And this really shook people. It became a realization that crystallized, if they weren't already aware, how important it is to have a valid, robust internet connection. And if there was no consciousness of what a digital divide looks like, well, that's your single illustration right there. So the way we connect to the internet has progressed. The easiest, lowest hanging fruit way to do it is to use the existing mediums. Originally, it was phone lines. Phone lines existed. Most places had a connection to the phone line. And so you take your modem, the thing that makes sounds like a fax machine, beep, 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 and it gets across the internet, it receives those beeps, and back and forth communication. You're good to go. And that was good for a while to exchange emails with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, because text was fine. Didn't need a lot. But as needs advanced, bandwidth requirements increased, that wasn't enough. And the cable companies moved in and started transmitting internet communication over coax. That was good for a while too, but that's not enough. And really, if you progress to where we are today, the only thing that's enough, and also is future-proof, and that's a key, is fiber. And what I passed around just earlier now is what that is fiber. So here we have a conduit, and this conduit gets run underground with tubes in it, and in these tubes you feed these fibers. This is 12 strands of fiber. This will transmit a lot of stuff, more than we'll ever need. And I hate to say that because history has proven that anytime you think you have enough, you don't have enough, but that's a lot. And we're asking ourselves, can we do this for Genesee County? And so you look back to the historical precedents for electrification. When Edison invented the light bulb, everybody thought he's onto something here. But you can just imagine, in the early days, there were no power plants, there were no utilities, there were generators. And so you think to yourself, the people who had the means could buy these generators. The factories that were advanced and had the resources could buy generators. And there's a great book by Nicholas Carr, called The Great Switch. And it delves into the history of electrification. It's fascinating. And you see the big churn happen when utilities came into existence. The first power station in America was in Manhattan, Pearl Street Station. And what happened is it created a more even playing field among manufacturers. So whereas one time, the more money you had, the bigger generator you could build, the more power you could produce, the more stuff you could turn out. Suddenly now you can just buy power, and you can focus not on your generators and the mechanics and the engineers all required to produce those, keep those generators running, and all the other infrastructure involved, the heat and all other stuff. No, you just buy power. You get it from the local utility. Now all you have to do is worry about producing your stuff. And that's when things started to explode. And you might look at it the same way when it comes to the internet. So today, more or less, if you have the means, it's not quite as stark as the electrification, you could buy a great internet connection. And if you don't, you don't. And so the ones who have can take advantage of that and can do all those things that the internet provides, and the ones that don't get that. So this is the terminology section. Middle mile and last mile. So you think of when it comes to accessing the internet over wires, the idea of a middle mile and last mile is sort of analogous to a wholesaler, distributor, and a retailer. So middle mile is the wholesaler. You get the mass quantity of stuff to a regional area, and then from that regional connection point, you can take it to the actual consumers. Middle mile and last mile. In a project like ours, we're looking at a two-phase, well, several-phase thing, but the major phase is producing that middle mile. And I'll show you a map later and we'll illustrate that just a bit. So I hope that little bit of terminology is not much. It should be easy. I'll have to tell you, even myself, it took me a while to get accustomed to saying that, have it roll off the tongue. Middle mile, last mile. The broadband initiative created a goal early on, and that is to create an underground broadband system to provide 24/7 high-speed internet access that is equitable, accessible, and affordable for Genesee County. And there's those three key words: accessible, equitable, accessible, and affordable. Equitable is that you get that internet access no matter who you are, no matter where you are. Doesn't matter how much money you have to invest. You may be called upon and say, well, you're in an area that we don't know that we can serve and make a lot of return on our investment. Commercial entity may say that. Please spend $20,000 to build a conduit from the road to your house. If you don't, I'm sorry, I can't help you. These are actual quotes. I'm not making this up. This kind of stuff happens. You yourself may have experienced this. I have many times, where I see the telltale roll of fiber in a trailer near my house. I've heard this over and over again. They're installing fiber right in front of my house. I can see them running it. I don't know who that is. I don't get fiber in my house. They're right there. I don't know if you've recalled seeing these things. You may pass by them, never noticed, never realized what they were, but they're always there. If you look at Genesee County, it's crisscrossed with fiber. We just don't know who has it, how to get to it, what it's for. Accessible is that you're not going to have to jump through hoops to get it. It should be easy. It shouldn't take a bunch of lawyers and researchers to understand who to call, how to get to it. Right now, even for as many resources that we have, we've tried to fiber up. And there are times we have to do a lot of work to find out. That's a lot of energy. It really shouldn't be that way for a vital resource. And finally, affordable. We think that internet access should be reasonably priced for all. Shouldn't have a price for one group of people based on how easy it is to get to them or build out or what profit potential they have. Should be reasonable. And if you look at the way utilities are run, reasonably regulated, I know we all, of course we all have complaints about the pricing, but nevertheless, there's some reasonable idea that price isn't being gouged because of one particular constituency or one particular profit potential, reasonable for all. And that gets to why we're doing this. Question of, do we believe that that's important enough? And so if you harken back to the original project, what's going to happen in 25 years, we don't really know for sure. I can only make you one promise. It'll be far more prevalent, far more resource intensive, far more important than it is today. And it's important today. I think it'll be that way in ways we can't really imagine. And if we gear up for what that might look like in the future, we have to ask ourselves, well, should we start planning today? Because we're not the only ones thinking this way. And if you look at some case studies, and one of the ones that gets mentioned a lot is Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's a few in Michigan as well. That Chattanooga, Tennessee took the bold move back in 2010 and spent about $220 million to fiber up that city. And according to independent economists, this is from the Urban Institute, they've gotten $2.6 billion return on that one investment. This isn't in any way meant to say that if we do something like this, we're going to get that kind of return. They were way ahead of the curve. So maybe they have the advantage of getting in early. And maybe they have other things that they've got to really act together to get that kind of return on their investment. But we're not the only ones who can see this anecdote. Everybody is studying this. Other counties are studying this. In Michigan, the city of Holland is fibered up. Township of Linden, fibered up. There's Allegan County that's doing it. Everyone's doing something to some level or another. Some went big, some are just small, but they're doing it. And the question before us is, do we believe that there's any return on investment for us, for Genesee County? And maybe the alternative question is, if we don't, do we think other counties are going to do it? And where will that leave us? And it's an important question to ask. Now, there is certainly the privates, the people who are after the profit potential, profit motive. They're building fiber. You've seen them. But they're not giving you that equity, accessibility, affordability necessarily. They're not promising that. Well, sure, they're promising. They may not be delivering it. There's no way to enforce that. There's no way to know. And the proposal that will come before you eventually will be something like a commission structure, where the county builds the conduits and invites competitive public-private partnerships to enable those people who will serve the public, the retailers, to get their stuff done so that they don't have to spend the incredible amount of money it takes to run fiber, top, east to west, north to south, and all points in between. The big cost of doing this is the construction. And so it's roughly $100,000 a square mile, or sorry, a mile in length. We have just our major freeways, the big I's, 88 miles of freeway in Genesee County. That's not scientific, I just Googled it. Let's just say that's what it is. Well, that's about, if you do a lot of contingencies, about $14 million to run conduit. Most privates won't do that. The smaller guys definitely won't do it. The big guys, oh sure, they'll do it. And that's kind of why you see today what looks like monopolies. Depending on what neighborhood you go into, you get the usual suspects if they can get to it and they think there's a profit involved. And once they're in there and they've saturated that community, the other ones will say, well, should I invest there? Should I compete with them? Well, it's going to cost me millions of dollars to get there, and they're way ahead of me. Am I going to do that? Well, they're going to think twice before they do that, which is why you don't have competition today. You have a little encroaching upon their territory with wireless. Some of the cellular providers are doing that, and they have an advantage because they don't have to build tunnels. But wireless will not get you to the future. There's not enough bandwidth. Only fiber will do that for you. So the how is the middle mile network, and more of the how is to do that public-private partnership. We have a peer county, Livingston, that we've studied quite a bit. They're ahead of us. They're about halfway through their digging. And they have done something where they, as they're running these, they're running ports every mile or so, so that they're not only selling bandwidth on their fiber, they're also selling space inside their conduits. So if, say, some large manufacturer or some university or some whatever has a really big need, they can rent our conduit space and then through a port, depending on where they are physically, go in, go out, and they're served. Again, they don't have to do the running, we do. Yes.
This is excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation. I'm sure my colleagues do. What is the specific ask? Is there a specific ask
No,
for
this
us?
is
Do
an
we need to
informative
take action?
There's no
Okay,
ask.
great information. Go ahead. Because I just wanted to see, was it something that we need to take action on? But thank you.
There will be in a future meeting.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes. So we're actually getting to the close to the end. The amount of work that needs to be done to make something concrete out of this in terms of a plan is really big. So we have engaged with a consulting company, the same one that Livingston used, that know how to do this work. This work is multifaceted, so there's the construction element I mentioned to you earlier. There's the engagement and negotiation part with anchor institutions. All of them are going to be big customers, or at least big users. Townships, certainly. And a whole lot of marketing and outreach. If it comes before you someday that says, we're going to want to spend some amount of money because we may feel like there's some return on that, it's good for the county, we can actually recoup our costs, that kind of stuff, you may be challenged on that. I assume, I don't know. And you're going to want to know you've gotten all your ducks in a row and this is something you can defend. You probably won't be able to do that without a lot of push, or at least lockstep move from the community itself. Now, I've known anecdotally from the few town halls I've gone to, people are behind this. They want this. And many of them have been underserved. And so I don't believe that's going to be a stretch, but nevertheless, we have to do that homework. I've seen where the commercial providers who've really got their act together have a Rolodex of political types in tow. They've got a marketing department and marketing people and photographers. They're not kidding around, and we have not begun doing that. And so the ask that will come is that we hire that consulting company to begin doing that planning. We don't know what makes sense in terms of routes, what would create a middle mile network. You know, sort of the major thoroughfares. We assume that middle mile, in theory, means that we'll want to get to within 1 or 2 miles of the majority of population of the county. Well, that's a lot of GIS work. And so we're going to want to do that. So there's a lot of public funding available, but there's no guarantee we would get that funding. There's a lot of grants. There's stuff we don't even know it exists yet, we think may be coming. We anticipate trying to leverage that to its maximum, but that's also part of the work that this group is going to be doing for us. And so I think, thank you for bearing with me, that is the presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
And Commissioners, to his point, what you'll probably see at our June meeting is a proposal to move forward with that consulting company to help us move to that next step and kind of coordinate this work on our behalf. So want to make sure you understood why, kind of why and where we're going and why it's needed before we bring that proposal forward.
I just have one
Any
question.
questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
just,
Mr. Winfrey.
what would be the implications of just leasing space from existing companies?
Other providers, commercial providers?
Yes.
It's possible, there's no guarantee it'll happen, and at that point, we're depending on them and their rate setting. We don't know.
Well, and part of that problem too is in certain areas within the county, they don't even have that infrastructure to lease from, right? So like where my mother lives up in, or lived up in Forest Township, they say she's got high-speed internet through Frontier. Well, it's a 2 megabit connection, which is, like dial-up basically. Today compared to, 100 or a gig that you can get from fiber. So the problem is the infrastructure countywide just isn't there in certain areas. And because, not that many folks live there, there's no incentive for private companies to go in and provide that. But then thinking of this from, to his point with Chattanooga, from just an economic development tool, if you're trying to attract people to come and live in your community and, remote work is a thing now, how do you do remote work when your connection is like dial-up, right? You're not going to attract people that want to come and live there. You're not going to attract business that wants to come and be there if that infrastructure isn't there.
One of the guarantees of a setup like this, the goals, the mission, would be to create competition. And everyone knows competition brings prices down, brings performance up. And reliance on commercial entities to do that is just not going to happen.
Just to, to kind of refresh everybody, when we first got our ARPA money and we kind of made our wish list of things that we wanted, broadband was on the top. And so we have to embrace it and, kind of connect our community into this, because I know like some schools, like where I live, some schools give free internet for their students, so I don't know, after they graduate, do they continue to get that free internet? I'm not sure. If they do, there wouldn't be a need, but there still is a need, even if that student's still in the house. So this way, they would still have it and still be able to learn at home if they're not, because home jobs are becoming a thing. I mean, my granddaughter works from home. She runs 2 computers. She does all basically medical, prescriptions and sends them out all at home. And it's a blessing that she's able to do that because, you know, she's epileptic, so she can't drive, she can't move to go some places. So this is an opportunity for those that aren't as fortunate to be able to be out in the workforce, to be able to work from home and earn a good living. So, thank you. Mr. Shoemaker?
You're not saying that we're gonna provide internet for people. You're saying we're gonna partner with somebody, they're gonna charge them. So the plan is free internet throughout the county, but we still have to pay, because you've obviously got to link into a major provider from there, or one of these providers. And so what she's saying, the school's paying for it. Well, we're not gonna pay for it for residents. They're gonna start putting the bill then, right?
Yes.
We're just providing the access to a more reliable, more robust system.
This might look like we're building the interstates, but we're not building UPS. So we're counting on the delivery people of the world, the ISPs who would be the interfaces with the customers, the billers, the service providers, to do that. They would simply use our interstate to get there. The interstate costs a lot of money to build. The relationship with the customer will still be with whoever does that today. And we will be inviting that competition because we're going to make it easier for them to step in. So you don't see UPS and FedEx building freeways. They're using our freeways, right? And that's how we get competition among delivery people. It doesn't take a lot, just get some trucks and get out there and deliver. If they had to do the building of the freeway, you'd only have one delivery company. That's similar to what we're talking about here. We're building conduits.
Madam Chair, one way, easy way that I've committed this to our laser focus to memory. Everybody knows earth, wind, and fire, right? Those are three elements that are essential for survival. For Genesee County, essential to our survival and future of development, we have to remember fiber, electricity, and water. Those three elements are going to help propel us into the future. Fiber, electricity, and water. The acronym is FEW. If you can remember, we're going to be among the few counties, like we are in the top 5 in terms of the allocation that the federal government has given us for BEAD funding. We got $1.6 billion allocated to us. We have to focus on fiber, electricity, and water. So 2 of those elements we have control over. We have control over fiber, which we're doing now. We have control over water, and we've been doing a lot of work around water. Remember that broadband, the BEAD acronym stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment. So one thing I want people to understand is that the federal government has this as a priority for establishing equity and access and affordability. But that does not mean that that's the only population that's going to benefit from this. If we focus on fiber, electricity, and water, those 3 elements, it will be crucial to attracting new industries as long as we have robust systems of fiber, electricity, and water. So as you sell this, and when we get ready to approve this contract that's coming before us in a little while, remember, it's a part of our long-term strategic plan: fiber, electricity, and water.
Good job.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mike, for the presentation. Okay, any old business?
Go ahead. Oh.
New business? Resolution 2024-522, approval of a purchase order to Berger Chevrolet for the fiscal year ending 2024 to provide for the purchase of a detective vehicle at Genesee County's Office of the Sheriff. This is grant-funded purchase.
Or
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Freeman. I know discussion just closed on that. Didn't we have a piece where we're looking to purchase like multiple vehicles or something like that?
Yeah,
Do
so
we have some coming for like a larger package or something?
We do. We have multiple vehicles on order that were approved at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay.
This is a one-off for a grant that wasn't included in that.
Okay.
And then you'll see at the beginning of the next fiscal year, another order again to get on that rotation.
Any timing on the delivery of those vehicles? there
We've
any
got
challenge?
22 Tahoes coming pretty quick.
What
June?
year will they be? 2024?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. Any other discussion?
I think a June delivery on this.
Being none, this meeting's adjourned. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we are adjourned.